Okay, so today we're going to talk about the different ways that you can start your story. Different ways to capture people's attention to make sure that it is an interesting and engaging story. Because really, lots of people will choose whether they want to read your story or not in the first few sentences, so you need to make sure you start interesting. Okay, we're going to go through about 10 different ways, so don't worry if you can't remember all of them. I'm going to give you a handout so you can have them with you every time you start a story, but we're going to go through the rest of them today. Okay, so the first, good old once upon a time. This is the most commonly used one when you're writing, and we see it lots of times in fairy tale. It isn't very creative, but it is very easy to use because you don't have to think about how to start it. You might want to make it more interesting if you are going to use this one by saying something like, once upon a particularly terrifying time. Almost like a twisted fairy tale, a fractured fairy tale, where you're trying to change around something within the normal one. But if you're just using once upon a time, it probably is a little bit sort of uncreative and a little bit plain, so you might want to think about using a different one. The next one is another commonly used one by young students, one day. Or you could use something like one gloomy day, or one sunny day, or one terrible day, one interesting afternoon. It's a very common one, and once again, one that you don't have to really think about. So if you're just sitting there going, I don't know how to start it, this is usually one of the ones that people use. Once again, this isn't a bad way to start it, but it is one of the ones that you might not stand out. So we want a little bit more interesting things. So we'll get to them from now. Here's the rest of them. Okay, you might want to start with direct speech. So with one of your characters speaking from the start, it really gets people's attention really early, but you need to make sure that the things that they're saying are going to be getting people's attention. So one of the first ones you could be saying like, hurry up, yelled Mum. The taxi will be here any minute. Suddenly you've got your attention. Why are they waiting for a taxi? Why does Mum care? Why is Mum yelling? So already they've got your attention. Or, wait, don't leave me here all alone, Sarah pleaded. Suddenly we want to read because we want to know why Sarah doesn't want to be left alone. So it's an interesting way to start with direct speech to get people's attention. So that's a way you could start it. Okay. All right. Next way, you might want to start with a question. Starting with a question is always an interesting way to do things. So you might want to have a character stating a question to the audience. So, have you ever thought about how one small action can cause your whole life to fall apart? By addressing the audience feels involved and they feel like they're part of the story already. Plus, already, by saying their whole life's fallen apart, we want to read on because we want to know why their life's fallen apart. You wouldn't be able to do that if you started with once upon a time. Not many people can be that interested in once upon a time that they really want to keep reading. But if you read a story like this, the first paragraph, you may want to keep reading. Or, don't you just hate that feeling when you know your teacher is going to yell at you? Suddenly it's a question to you, but really what you think is, why does the teacher want to yell at him? What did he do to make them want to yell at him? And we feel like they're talking to us, so we feel more involved in the story. So that's also another interesting way to start one. Next one, you might start with a sound effects. Once again, it gets people's attention and makes them start to think about whether they would really like to read this story or not. So it's like, eek, went the brakes as the car skidded sideways. Okay, it gets you involved. Why did the car skid sideways? Is everybody okay? Or bang! I wasn't sure what was at my front door, but I didn't want to find out. Once again, getting people's attention. What was at the door? What happened? What was the bang? Okay, everybody already really is involved and engaged, and they want to know more. It's an interesting way to start a story. So that's using a sound effect. You could get straight into the action, and then you can kind of go back and develop the character later. But at the start of your story, the way you start is already in action. Like, I could feel everyone's eyes staring at me. Okay, they think, where is this? Are they doing a public speaking thing? Did something happen to them? Are they embarrassed in class? We don't know why their eyes are staring at you, but we want to know more. Or the sound was getting louder and louder. Building that tension and that anxiety in the story is a really good way to start as well. So here's another style about getting straight into action. Whatever's happening, you start with the action. Then you can go back and sort of develop the characters and introduce the people. But really at the start, you're making everyone excited and you're making everyone want to read your story. Next one, a character could introduce themselves. This is a common one that people use where especially if you're the one narrating your own story, if it's in the first person, a character introducing themselves is a really good way of saying it. So like this one. Hi, I'm Carl. I've got a brain like a computer and a photographic memory. I can remember every single day of my life, and I have timed that I've been speaking to you for exactly 23.4 seconds. Suddenly we think, this boy's really interesting. He's got a photographic memory and he knows everything. We want to keep reading. What else does he know? What else does he remember? Because we like interesting characters. We like characters that we can relate to, or characters that we find really interesting. So, having a character introduce themselves, as long as it's not boring. Hi, I'm Carl. I live in Stevenson Street and I go to school. I like eating my lunch and playing Xbox. Make sure that the character is really interesting. Why do we want to know more about this character? Okay, so that's another way. You could start with a statement. Michael was miserable. Or, it was the best day of Stephen's life. Or, Cindy was so excited that she was shaking. So starting with a statement is also another way to start your stories. You could describe a place or a character. Give a description of the imagery. So you're describing what's happening in the scene. So the smell of fresh pancakes swept through my room and I knew it was time to get up. You're using adjectives to describe the place that he is, describing the pancakes or describing something. So it's giving us a good visualization of the scene. Or the cold dark room was eerily quiet and it smelled as if something or someone had died in this room. Describing a place or something or one of the characters is a really good way to get people involved. It's a really good way to get people to start visualizing the scene. So that's describing a character or a place. And the last style you can use is a flashback style. And this is that you start from the end of the story and you flash back to the start and then tell the story from the start. So it's, as I sat slouched in the police station cell, I wondered about the events that had led me to this terrible place. So you start from like the end where he ends up in the police station, and then you get people hooked about how did he get in here, and then you tell the story from the start and go all the way back. So he's like telling it from the future, he's going back and telling from the past. So that's the other style of way you can do things. So, in summary, you can start a story however you want to however you want to, but try to be creative. You need to get the audience's attention early, and you need to make them involved in the story. Okay, so remember, you can do all sorts of different things. You can say one day, once upon a time. You can use direct speech where you're making the character speech. You can go straight into the action early. You can describe a character, introduce a character. You can describe the imagery of a scene. You can do lots of other things. All these things are really good ways to start a story. And I'm going to give you a printout to have in your books so that you will have all these with you so you can think about how to start your story more interesting. I hope this has helped. Thank you.